Welcome back everyone. Today we'll be discussing Sonic Heroes, released in 2003. After the demise of the Sega Dreamcast, the fate of Sega as well as our Hedgehog was unknown. With the sales of the Dreamcast not doing so great, it was unclear if Sega was going to be able to continue. That is, until they made the smart move to become a third-party company, which will allow them to develop games for other consoles. And this would soon lead them to release games on Nintendo consoles. You heard that right. Sega games being released on Nintendo consoles, and this was a big deal at its time. Nintendo and Sega were huge rivals back then, and still are to this day, but Sonic games specifically being available on Nintendo was a very big deal at that time. It would all start with Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 being re-released for the GameCube, but it wasn't until 2003 that Sonic's newest game would kick it off, that being Sonic Heroes. This is the version that I'll be playing on, seeing as I no longer have my PS2 copy, and I have no intel of the Xbox version. So with that said, let's begin. This is my royal review of Sonic Heroes for the Nintendo GameCube. Oh, and just to get to the point here, Sonic Heroes' story does not continue with a huge deep narrative. This is a simpler classic story where Sonic and friends stop Eggman from taking over the world with the power of teamwork. Speaking of teamwork, Sonic Heroes has you play a total of 12 characters, but they're all in a set of teams. That being Team Sonic featuring Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, Team Dark featuring Shadow Rouge and new character E123 Omega, Team Rose featuring Amy Rose, Cream the Rabbit, and Big the Cat, and last but not least Team Chaotix featuring Espio the Chameleon, Vector the Crocodile, and Charmy Bee. Just like in Adventure 1 and 2, when fully completing the team story, the last door will be unlocked. With that said, let's get a move on, shall we? Team Sonic's story began with the trio getting a message from Dr. Eggman, daring them to stop his plan of conquering the world. With no hesitation, the three go and do just that. Team Dark's story gets a little more interesting out of the four teams. It begins with Rouge sneaking to one of Dr. Eggman's bases, where she attempts to look for treasure, but to her surprise, she finds and discovers a living, breathing Shadow the Hedgehog, who somehow survived his death in Adventure 2. But they're not alone, as one of Eggman's robots that were locked inside the room quickly attacks Shadow, believing him to be one of Eggman's creations. Before things get crazy, Rouge stops the fight where she then gets more clarity of the situation. It's revealed that Omega wants to eliminate the Doctor and his creations for sealing him in this room, and in Shadow's case, all of his memories are gone, so he doesn't remember anything that's happened in the last game. Instead of explaining everything that's happened to Shadow, Rouge instead makes the three of them a team to look for the Doctor's treasures and to destroy everything that he owns. This has to be one of the itching moments in Sonic Heroes. Why doesn't Rouge, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles ever explain Shadow's past to him? Amy knows Shadow's story too, but in her defense, she doesn't encounter Shadow until the end of the last story. It's definitely one of those events that doesn't have any logical explanation behind it. Team Rose is looking for Cream's child's friend, Chicola, and Big's missing frog. Lastly, Team Chaotix are detectives and gets a job from their unknown client to help pay the rent. At the end of their story and the beginning of the last story, we find out that their client was actually Dr. Eggman, who was imprisoned by none other than Metal Sonic himself, who had been collecting battle data from the other teams to become an all-powerful monster of mass destruction. The Eggman that we thought was the real deal turned out to be a fake. With the power of teamwork, Sonic uses the Chaos Emeralds to transform into his super form, while Knuckles and Tails disappointingly get only these orbs of light. The battle ends with Metal Sonic's defeat and Sonic and friends running to their next adventure, ending Sonic Heroes. So yeah, this is a much smaller, simpler story, and I'm okay with that. I'm all for Sonic games having bigger stories. At the same time though, there's nothing wrong with Sonic stories being simpler as long as the writing and characters are done decently, and that's exactly what we have here. In this game, for the first time, characters are able to talk with each other in stages, leading to small conversations about their environment and callbacks to previous adventures. I love this inclusion because it helps make the characters feel more alive as you're going through stage to stage. And just like in the adventure games, the teams will encounter one another and fight, but the reasons to why they fight can get silly.
Gotcha, my darling Sonic.
Amy, what are you doing here?
Sonic, this time there's no way out of marrying me.
Sensors locked on Eggman. Non-compliant intruders will be destroyed.
Didn't you know? We have a date with Eggman too.
Is that so? Well then, it'll be a date to die for.
Hey, that's my line.
Excuse me, miss. I was wondering if I could ask you something.
If it's about a date, it'll have to wait.
Jade! You think this is a joke, you little brat?
Now hand over that chow nice and easy.
I bet you're the ones who took chocolate chow.
What?
It's not nice to tease my friends.
rock and roll!
Alright, time to get into the gameplay. As I mentioned before, you'll be playing as 4 different teams. Despite that, every team plays the exact same way. There are 3 types within a team. The speed types that are the fastest with the ability to dash, which this game calls the Rocket Excel. The flying types that allow you to fly for a brief time. And then we have the power types that bring the most damage and can glide. All 3 characters will stay together from beginning to end. When it comes to the levels, I love their design choice. We're kind of going back to the Adventure 1 territory where stages are opened up more, having high speed action while also being platform focused. Just like in Adventure 1, there will be moments where you'll come across multiple pathways depending on the character type you use. Now let's get into the combat. For the first time in Sonic, enemies are now holding health bars. You can't simply just home attack at your opponents like in the adventure games. Enemies are now wielding shields, lances, and bigger robots to fight. And you can't just simply avoid them anymore either, since there will be times where you have to take them down to keep progressing, and the stronger they become, the harder it is to destroy them. But it's not all as bad as it sounds. In this game, there's a level up system that increases your abilities to make things easier. As you play through the stage, you'll come across level up boxes. Sometimes they can be kept inside these red balloons too. With speed characters, I believe it just increases the homing attack, but when it comes to the flight and power types, they're on a completely different level. For the flying types, we have the Thunder Shoot. At level 1 and 2, it normally stuns your opponent, but at level 3, this outright damages every enemy in sight. Power characters were already capable damage dealers, but when leveled up to 3, they add a higher area of attack, like Vector shooting up gun bombs, Omega shooting out missiles, and even Knuckles causing an earthquake explosion. Another new addition is the team attack that you can fill up by gathering rings or damaging enemies. It's pretty much a screen nuke that, depending on the team you play, comes with a special kick. For Team Sonic, you'll have the ability to use the light speed attack if you use the Thunder Shoot skill. For Team Dark, there's the Chaos Control that freezes any enemy that survives the team attack. Keep in mind though that this move also freezes progression, so if the door doesn't seem to open, you most likely have to wait for a few seconds. Team Rose is my favorite attack. Not only does this kill any enemy in sight, but it also comes with 3 special bonuses. You get a shield, a level up, and invincibility for a few seconds. Now that is awesome. Team Chaotix comes closely second. Depending on how many enemies are nearby, your team attack will receive ring bonuses. Not only is this move great for gaining extra lives, but since rings are another way for refueling team attack, you'll most likely have a complete tank after the cooldown period. So yeah, everyone seems to be perfectly capable of combat. When it comes to the controls, this is where things get problematic. For some reason, specifically when it comes to the speed characters, can be very slippery. When going fast, there's a 90% chance that the speed formation will cause your death. I'm all for going fast in a Sonic game, but if it's too fast to the point where I'm at risk of falling to my death, there's clearly a problem here. In Adventure 1 and 2, Sonic controlled flawlessly. The controls were precise and the speed was controllable. If I were to ever die in those games, it would most likely be my fault for being too careless, or sometimes the camera didn't give me a good angle. In Heroes, when I'm playing as a speed character, it's only when I know I can get away with it. Otherwise, I'm most likely going to switch to the flying formation or the power formation. But even the power formation can be slippery. In this case, it's the combat, at least with just Knuckles and Omega, because when attacking, they start moving forward. So in their case, it's best not to use them on small platforms, where they're guaranteed to fall to their deaths. The other thing that infuriates me is the inability to switch characters in mid-air. Can you imagine how many deaths I could have prevented if this was possible? When talking about stages and their obstacles, I find them challenging and fun in some cases, but I have 3 that I can't stand: Rail Canyon, Egg Fleet, and Bingo Highway. Bingo Highway has its pinball physics. When controlling characters like pinballs, it's difficult to maneuver them where you want them to go. Then we have Rail Canyon in the second half of Egg Fleet. So you remember the grind rails in Adventure 2, right? They were a small but great inclusion. Being able to switch from rail to rail, keeping your balance to maintain speed, it was awesome. Heck, on multiplayer there was an exclusive level that was all about grind railing the fastest. But here, they messed it up. Rail switching has now become a life or death situation. Just a slight tap to the left or right can shoot you 10 feet into the Shadow Realm. On top of that, you have obstacles that you need to avoid by switching rails. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And I swear this was worse in the PS2 version. Combined with the length of certain stages, completing these levels can indeed be a dragging pain. Right, I guess I should get into that part. The time it takes to complete a stage and the challenges that you go through all depend on the team you decide to choose. For example, Team Sonic is the normal mode. Team Dark is the hard mode, Team Rose is the easy mode, and Team Chaotix is a bit random. You can finish a level with Team Rose as early as 3 to 5 minutes at best, while Team Sonic and Team Dark can be 8 to 12 minutes at worst, getting to the point where they become marathon levels. And for God's sake, if you end up getting a game over, you'll have to start all over again. In my experience, I never actually had a game over, seeing as I had plenty of lives, but those countless deaths still add up, especially if you somehow miss a checkpoint, leading you to start all over again anyway. In all honesty, Team Rose has the better experience. Even if I were to die in their team, completing a stage wouldn't be as time consuming, even at the hardest level. This leads us to Team Chaotix. Team Chaotix stages are mission based, collect and destroy a certain number of items or enemies to complete the stage. Your time on the stage solely depends on the number game. Sometimes it could be as simple as finding 3 keys or searching 5 chow, and then other times you have to hunt and destroy 25 egg bots or blow up 60 torches. If for some reason you couldn't find the total amount shown, you will have to bloom these flowers at the end of the stage, where it will bring you back to the beginning to search again. And by the time you find the total, you'll most likely be ending the stage by 15 minutes. When it comes to games like Sonic, I'm comfortable with the length of the stage being around 4 to 5 minutes. By that time, I've already had my fun and challenges. I believe games like Sonic can be short as long as they give us interesting levels with fun yet challenging obstacles that make us want to keep playing the game again to get better. And if they were to ever get longer, make sure that there's nothing wrong with the controls. Now, despite my complaints with the teams, it's all optional. Who's to say you want to play all 4? Maybe you're fine with just playing Team Dark's story. Heck, maybe you want to finish Team Rose's story too and be done. But let's say you're someone like me who gets his enjoyment by completing everything in a game, finishing Sonic Heroes can end up being a drag, which leads us to the last story. Getting the last story requires that you 100% complete every team story and collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Now it should be clear, I'm all for completing a character's story to unlock the final ending. I did in Adventure 1, and I did with Adventure 2. The difference between those 2 games were that every character had their own story, with different gameplay styles and different levels that had their own unique experience, or at least had different level orders. And here, you have to finish every stage in the same order and time. Even though you're playing as different characters, that doesn't change the fact that they control and behave the same way, to the point where they might as well be character swaps. Now how about getting those Chaos Emeralds? Getting the Chaos Emeralds requires that you find these hidden keys located in every Act 2 stage, and reach the goal without dying, where you'll be sent to the special stage. Oh my god! Why in the 7 hells are the special stages so terrible? Who is responsible for making the special stages? I must know! In order to get the emeralds, you need to dash straight to it before it reaches the end. Sounds simple, right? No! We have 2 big major issues here. We have the spiky bombs that slow you down more than a snail, and one of the worst controls I have ever seen. Seriously, who is responsible for these special stages? Why does it take 10 seconds to regain my speed? Why am I suddenly slowing down for no reason despite retaining my speed boost? Why is everything just not working? Not to mention, even after you get the emeralds, you can only get Supersonic in the final boss, and I don't get that. I'm positive Supersonic could have been playable in normal stages because in terms of his abilities, he's not that different from his normal form. Changing the subject, Sonic Heroes graphics look amazing. They're definitely a step up from Adventure 2. Character models are much more fluid, stages have a variety of unique colorful locations with a consistent frame of 60 frames per second. At least that's what it feels like. The voice acting is great. We still have our returning voice cast that perform just as well as previously. When it comes to other content, Sonic Heroes gives us multiplayer. To unlock all of it, you need to simply collect a certain number of emblems by completing a stage. In terms of multiplayer, I'll say that there's some fun here and there, but I'd much rather play Adventure 2's multiplayer. Sonic Heroes is a game that I do enjoy, but just can't ignore the flaws. The level design is good, I don't have any problems with the enemy placement, I enjoy the team mechanic, I love the character interactions and stages, and I especially enjoy the variety of stages. The game has the energy and feeling of a Sonic game, but the one thing that's holding it back is the controls. Control in a game is a lot more important than most realize. You can have great levels, interesting characters, and fun gimmicks, but if the controls are bad from the start, why keep going? If Sonic Heroes controls were more like the adventure games, I'm positive things would be a lot more comfortable. I have no issues with going fast as long as I'm still in complete control. If I end up dying, it should be my fault because I was either too careless or just didn't have the proper reaction time. With that said, I still recommend it. It's not the best game, but it does have its good moments. With that said, I'm Maxilorial9. Everyone have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, we did it!
Phew, that was pretty tough. Too bad it's all over. For you!
Insulting. Your training has been a waste of time.